The story of the Bunny Man goes back many, many years, but originally didn't begin until around 1931, after many gruesome murders had already been committed. While I myself have never seen the Bunny Man, everyone in the town of Clifton believes it to be true. So much so that the US government had to get involved and tasked a few representatives to confirm it as such, after many, many years of eyewitness accounts from the citizens of Clifton, and eventually has even spread onto the internet as a result. What I'm about to tell you is entirely true. Before I get into this, I want to give a small reference for you to better understand this story. The bridge is a one-lane car road, passing under a dual railroad track above it, in the woods along a gravel road. Back in 1903, there used to be an asylum buried deep within the wilderness of Clifton. Pretty soon after the Civil War, people started inhabiting the area. Population-wise was around 300 or so. It was a very small town. Nonetheless, people didn't like the idea of having an asylum miles down the road. So they all got together and signed a petition for the asylum to be relocated elsewhere. The petition was passed, and a new asylum was built, which is now known today as Lorton Prison. A temporary facility for convicts to stay until they are appropriately sentenced. In the autumn of 1904, the convicts were gathered and piled into the bus used to transport them to Lorton. Somewhere during the drive, not too far from where they left, the driver had swerved to avoid something, and the bus had started to tip, and soon was rolling in a terrible collision course. Most of the convicts were injured but managed to escape the bus and had fled into the night toward the woods. The next morning, a local police investigation had begun, and they begun rounding up all the escaped convicts. Hours had turned into days, days into weeks, and weeks into months. Everyone was recovered after 4 months, except 2 people, named Marcus A. Waltster and Douglas J. Griffin. During the search for both men, the police found dead rabbits, all of them half-eaten and dismembered, every now and then along their search. Finally, they were to find Marcus dead by the Fairfax Station Bridge, now known as Bunny Man's Bridge. In his hand, he held a man-made hammer knife-like tool, made of a sharp rock and a sturdy branch as a handle. They thought nothing of it and didn't care how he died, only that he was apprehended and that they no longer had to worry about him. They had a name for Marcus, but later they would realize that they had named the wrong man the Bunny Man. Still searching for Douglas, they kept on finding dead half-eaten rabbits every so often while the search went on. Eventually, they were to name Douglas as the Bunny Man from then on. Months passed by, and the police gave up their search. Everybody assumed that the Bunny Man was dead by now, if not gone. So they went on with their small-town lives. Come October, people started seeing dead bunnies reappearing out of the blue, and started to fear the unseen. Halloween night came around, and as usual, a bunch of kids had gone over to the bridge that night to drink, and do whatever kids their age in the early 20th century did. Midnight came around, and within minutes, most of the kids had left. Only 3 of them remained at the bridge. And at exactly midnight, a bright light came from the bridge, right where the kids were. A few seconds later, they were all dead. Throats slashed with the same type of tool that was found next to the other escapee Marcus. Not only were their throats slashed, but they were cut up and down their chests, gutted like fish. The bunnymen then hung the boys from the end of the bridge with the rope around their necks, hanging from the overpass with their legs dangling in view of any passing cars. The girls were hung in the same way, on the other side of the bridge. This all happened on Halloween night in 1905. After that, they didn't see or hear anything from him for another year. Halloween 1906 was approaching, and the parents, as well as the teens in Clifton, still remember the incident that had occurred 1 year ago at the bridge. His bridge. Bunnyman's bridge. That night, 7 teens were left remaining right before midnight at the bridge, thinking little of it. 6 remained inside the bridge while one, a girl named Adrian Hatala, had remained a good distance from the bridge, hoping to have enough time to escape if the same thing happened again. She was the only one to witness this. A dim light walking the railroad track just before midnight, stopping right above the bridge at midnight, then disappearing at the same time that bright flash was inside the bridge. She heard the deafening sounds of terrified screams coming from the inside of the bridge that lasted only seconds. Moments later, they were all hung from the edge of the bridge in the same way the corpses a year earlier were. Horrified, she ran home as fast as she could and refused to tell all of what she saw. She just spattered words mixed with incoherent mumblings that the people of her town had to put together to come up with her story. No one understood it or believed her. They charged her with the teen's murders and locked her up in the asylum of Lorton. In 1913, the same thing happened, with 9 teenagers this time, on Halloween night, once again. Adrian was still locked up. They dropped her sentence, but it was already too late. The insanity had finally conquered her. Even if she was released, she was far too gone to have a life. So, she spent her remaining years in the asylum until she finally died in 1953 of reported shock. No one knows what exactly she died of shock from, but supposedly, she had died in her sleep, dreaming of that one dreaded night. Perhaps the Bunnyman had finally gotten to her. More murders were to take place, however, although after the murders in 1913, most people stayed clear of the bridge on Halloween. 1943 rolls around, and 6 teenagers go strolling out on Halloween night. A couple hours later, all of them were dead. Same way as all the others. Investigations took place, but as usual, nothing was discovered. 1976, the same situation occurs, this time with only 3 people. The only other incident that had occurred since then was in 1987. A girl named Janet Charlataire was enjoying the night with her 4 friends. Halloween night had finally come, and they had all gone driving out to enjoy the night after invading the children's candy bags. They had settled around 11 p.m. at the bridge, waiting for midnight to come. They didn't believe in the myth, so they decided to see for themselves. And they were to be the only ones who actually withstood the Bunnyman. They had waited around an hour or so it was nearly midnight, when Janet started getting a little scared. They all had been pulling pranks on each other, jumping out of the bushes and screaming. So she was already a little worked up. Midnight hits, and by this stage, she's in a total panic. She's almost out of the bridge when the lights get really bright inside. When that happens, her body is halfway outside of the bridge. She sees her skin start tearing at her chest, but nothing is piercing her skin. She manages to finally leave the bridge, completely horrified. She hits a hanging body and knocks herself out. When she awakens, she discovers that she had been bleeding. She was lucky that the cut had just started and wasn't very bad at all. She left and never returned to the bridge again. They say, if you ever decide to come visit Clifton, she can always be seen sitting on a swinging bench on her balcony every morning, just staring in the direction towards the bridge, a couple miles down the road. And from then on, the story remains untouched and unmoved. For more verification on this story, you can visit the Old Clifton Library in Clifton, Virginia, USA.